Hi, everyone. I think I can start by welcoming you. Good morning. And we're very glad that you're here in Tetarto Kiklio in Chalkida. You're going to listen some words about the space shortly by Babis Fetzas. But just to share a little bit of my experience, we've come together here for the presentations and the artistic exhibition of 6 artists, 4 international and 2 local artists that worked in the International Lab of Turning the Tide, which we decided to call ichni, or traces, the Greek word for traces. You can see the work unfolding around you. And what I can say for myself is that I spent a month here in Evia along with the artists. We came together, we talked with the local communities, and we thought that we were gonna see people who were very hesitant to speak with us, or that wouldn't want to touch on the trauma. But instead of that, we actually saw resilient people, people who were very willing to fight to build their land again. And that for me was very, very touching. I think the theme of the whole residency changed from the floods and the fires and the destruction to the rebuilding and the regeneration and the resilience of people. And this is what is reflected also in the works. To also welcome you a little bit and walk you through the agenda, we're going to start, as I told you, with Babis Fetsas. He's a local expert, and he's going to walk you through the tidal phenomenon of Halkis, which you can see behind you. If we didn't have the rain, it would be a bit more visible. But for 6 hours, the waters go in one direction, and for 6 hours, they go into the different direction. And after that, we're gonna have the presentations of the artists, starting with Remy and Marlies, or Deer Hunter, who have a dual role in this project. As you know, they're project partners, but also they do field research and produce the map that you can see in the back. So I'll give the floor to Babis Fetsa so he can walk you through the tidal phenomenon, and I'll be with you for the rest of the agenda.
Πρέπει να βάλουμε τις πίνακες εδώ, με κάποιο τρόπο. Θα γυρίσουμε λίγο αυτό.
Ελάτε εδώ πέρα. Ελάτε από εδώ. Αφήστε το αυτό. Ελάτε από εδώ. Αφήστε το αυτό.
Α, συγγνώμη. Θα βάλουμε αυτό εδώ. Να έχω μια ελευθερία κινήσεων όμως. Λίγο αυτό αν είναι δυνατόν. Πιο εκεί για να μπορούμε να κινούμε. Οκ.
Να σηκώσω λίγο το τηλεφωνάκι αν μπορεί να πηγαίνει κοντά για να σας ακούμε.
Ναι, σωστά. Δεν μπορεί να το... Ναι, να... Εντάξει. Οκ. Ωραία. Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, I would like to welcome to Chalkida an individual to every post channel. It is useful for the visitors coming to Chalkida to know a few things about the tidal phenomenon of every post channel. The tidal phenomenon that can be observed in the every post channel is a rare phenomenon in the world. The normal flow of the tides is 6 hours to one direction, then follows a period of 8 minutes, approximately 8 minutes, that the waters remain stationary. After this period follows another period that the sea waters flow to the exact opposite direction for even 6 hours. So 6 hours to one direction, for example, from north to south, remain stationary for 8 minutes, and then 6 hours from south to north. For many, the explanation of this phenomenon has become their own personal myth-day life. Numerous astronomers, geographers, mathematicians, philosophers, and other scientists trying to explain what causes it and discover what causes it. Aristotle, you know Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher, geographer, mathematician, said that the tidal phenomenon is dependent on the moon and occurs during the lunar month. As you can see, there is a doubly gravitational pull from the sun and the moon towards the earth and individually towards the waters, the sea waters of Everybus. But Aristotle said that the moon influences at all because the moon is closer to the sun. The distance from the sun to the earth is 150 million kilometers, and the distance from the moon to the earth is approximately 400,000 kilometers. So the moon is closer to the sun, so the moon is influenced at all the tidal phenomenon. And as Aristotle said, the tidal phenomenon occurs during the lunar month. This is the lunar month. The lunar month is the time that the moon turns around the earth. Okay? And the lunar month, this is the lunar month, lasts 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes. Exactly. Absolutely accuracy. Okay? 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes. This is the time that the moon turns around the earth. Okay? And during this lunar month occurs the tidal phenomenon. You can see first, second, third, fourth, but as you can see, 7th, 8th, 9th lunar day and 22, 22nd, 23rd, 24th lunar days, they are in a different color. These are two periods called periods of disorder. During these periods, the sea waters do not obey in any natural law and do not follow the 6-hour rotation flow, the normal 6-hour rotation flow. During these periods, the sea waters, it is possible to change direction as many as 14 times a day, or they may not change direction as long as for all day. This function of tidal phenomenon of the universe is not explained yet. Many scientists trying to explain and discover what causes it, but they cannot explain yet. But the fact that the tidal phenomenon is unique in the world is this. After the third and final lunar day of each period of disorder, at 24 plus past 1 minute hour. On the last and final, okay, day, lunar day of each period of disorder. The sea waters start always, 1,000 years ago, start flowing from the north to south. This is the function, this is the fact that the tidal phenomenon is unique to the world. We can see that the universe speaks to the human beings in a language without words, only with signals that human beings not discovered yet. This function, the accuracy, this accuracy is a law of universe that is not violating, that is never violated, in contrary to the human law that is violated every day. Okay, so another thing, special thing. Here we are in every post channel. There is energy from the universe because of the gravitational pull. There is energy, and the energy of universe is always positive. Okay, so if anyone from us make a wish, this wish via the traditional pull is possible to transfer to the universe, even to the God, it is possible to come true. So, if you want, make a wish. And many visitors told me that I want to prove that my wish came true. How can I do this? So I have a book, wishes book. Many visitors from foreigners and Greek visitors have written their wishes, and to prove to their husband, to their friends, that I have written in this book a wish and came true. Okay? And the last thing, I've written this book. It is small but include. It has information for all of this and many others. There are many photographs from the ancient and many photographs to the channel and the town and the other, and explain many things about the tidal phenomenon. Okay, this book has been awarded by the International Society of Greek Writers and Artists. Okay, costs only €5. If you want, you can buy. Thank you very much, and welcome, welcome to Chalkida. Here they are. If you want, okay.
Thank you very much, Babis. Also for a hint of spirituality in the conversation between nature and wishes, and everything that you said was very interesting. So we can welcome now Dear Hunter, artistic duo, but also project partners who worked on mapping Northern Evia and Evia in general, I must say, and also worked in close collaboration with the artists, running workshops, and we also had a very nice exchange. So I'll leave the floor to you if you want to come up.
Good morning. This is or Calimera. This is a real bricoleurs setup, and I'll explain in a bit what that means. Can I take that off because I really feel like a singer otherwise? Yes. Yeah, thanks all for coming. I'll talk a little bit about the work that we did by first of all presenting a little bit ourselves, and then the map. You cannot see the map here on this screen very well. You might see it a bit better over there, but then it's much smaller. And there's a third version of the map over there, which is the final print. We still have some copies left, but most are already given away. And if you like, you can simply contact us and then we can send or a PDF or a printed version to you, which is for free. Yeah, let's just start. My name is Marlies. Remy is sitting here in front of me. We're both the partners from the Netherlands. You all, when you think of the Netherlands, you think of a flat country with a lot of canals and that's it, and Amsterdam maybe. But the Netherlands also have one hill, which is called Mount Vaals. And that is that hill, not drawn by us, but drawn by somebody, well, it's unknown by whom it's drawn, but we got this postcard from the 50s from an inhabitant. And we are situated more or less here, halfway the highest mountain of the Netherlands. This is, if you can see it, I don't know. You can maybe see it there. Maybe before I continue, come sit a bit closer. Do that too. Come sit a bit closer. Then we can maybe see it. Come, Robbie, Joe, sit a bit closer. Then you can maybe see it better. Thanks. Can you see it better? Yeah? Will it stay? Yeah? Okay. Okay, this is our mountain hut. Of course, we're not really living in the mountains because we are only 246 meters above sea level, which is really nothing. But for us, it's more than enough because it makes us look at any environment as if we would be in the mountains. It makes us experience and being humble to our surroundings as if we would be in the mountains. It makes us so tiny towards our landscape around us, like you would be in the mountains. And that is for us very important as a metaphor because it makes you be much more sensitive to your environment than you would otherwise be. Another thing which is from mountain huts, something that we really adore is that when you go hiking in the Alps or in the Pyrenees or any kind of mountainous landscape, you probably will use more than one map and not only Google Maps. You will also incorporate what locals say or what you hear from other climbers in mountain huts. And that collaborative practice with multiple maps is something that we really engage in our mapping. Of course, we also climb other mountains, like here the Mount Dirvis, with our two little doggies. So we have had the opportunity to go all the way up at the highest point of this island and see the two coastlines at the same time. It was an incredible day, an incredible climb too. It's not an easy climb, I would say, but a safe one. It was very nice to do. And I showed this picture, and it's maybe a bit inappropriate to show such a picture in a more how to say, corporate or formal setting. But for us, it's super important because every map we make we stay on site. And we stay on site as if we would live there, as if we would be locals, or at least we try to be. That's also why we bring our dogs, that's why we bring our printer, that's why we bring as much as possible to try to feel at home. Because in research, in artistic research or any other kind of research, we often miss that intimacy, that vulnerable attitude towards a place and towards the topic that you're dealing with. And therefore, we share those photos as well, because who is doing research, who is mapping, who is the artist really matters. We don't try to be objective. We don't try to be from a distance. We simply try to be as close as possible to an area and as personal as possible. Yeah. We also went to other places. Here we are in the middle of the Lilas River, which I really adore this picture because it's for us coming from the Netherlands, where there's always water in the canals. It is really crazy to think that you can drive through a river just like that, even though it's not allowed. Everybody is doing it and using these informal places. Of course, we also this is Rovies, I think. We also visited places with floodings and also where the forest fires took place. This is a picture closer to Agiana, if I'm not mistaken, where we saw of course, the incredible catastrophes that took place, but also the beautiful yellow flowers that, even though we're still fighting who is going to do what with the land at what certain point, nature already started to show its beauty by these flowers. And then lastly, we also went to the south to see all the wind turbines that have been put on the high hills because the wind is there at its maximum. So we traveled all around the island. We tried to be everywhere where we could, trying to understand what makes this place so interesting. And that is what cartopologist does. Cartopology is a combination between cartography and anthropology. And that's how we make our maps. So we stay on site, we stay there for a while, we try to be inhabitants, participate in the daily life rather than asking people to participate with us. We participate with what happens at a certain place. And from that point of view, we try to make maps, not to replace other maps, but to make new maps. We have done that for this project already on 3 other places. So we already went to Poland, to Gdansk. We already went to Austria, to Vienna. And now we are here. And then at the end of this year, we will also go to Sweden, Stockholm, for the 4 locations, 4 official locations of this project, where we also can start to compare daily lives related to water and water problems. And we also found the funding to make a map at our place too, also about the floodings that took place in the area where we live in the Netherlands. So we will have at the end of this project 5 maps that work with the topic turning the tide, in order to be able to compare all over Europe what's happening on a local point of view. Now to the map here, if the traffic allows me to talk a bit about it. So this is the final result of the map we made here. And making the map is as important as the end product itself, not only for us, but also for people to share with. Our neighbors in Mythikas have seen the map much more unfinished than finished, for example. So for us, it's also the process of making, which is a process of thinking, process of being in contact with other people, being in contact with the community, which is as important as showing the final result here today. Let's see if this works. Kato Kosmos Anno Cosmos. I'm not sure if I pronounce it properly, and there's also plenty of accents on the O's and the A's. But to make no mistakes, we left them out. And what we saw in this on this island was the following. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Yeah. We observe two phases of the island, not one old and one new, not traditional versus modern, not small scale versus large scale, or conservative versus progressive. It goes much deeper than that. We see two fundamentally different ways of relating to a place and to a life on that place. And that might be something that you can see everywhere, but it's something that we really encountered here in a very rich contrast way, let's say, and to be able to map that, as you can see here, we made some sort of, this is based on the outlines of the island, and then we made some sort of mirror-like version on the bottom, which with the phenomenon you talked about very engagingly here in the middle of the map, showing also that Kato and Anokosmos also need one another. But it goes quite deep, what we see, those two faces of the island. And by being here, we suddenly recognize what the French anthropologist, Claude Lévi-Strauss described in his book La Pensée Sauvage, or The Wild Thinking. He contrasted two types of thinkers. First of all, the bricoleur, and secondly, the engineer. The bricoleur works with what is at hand. Materials, tools, knowledge accumulated over generation. That's what's happening here. I try to be the bricoleur, trying to work with what is at hand. They explore, experiment, and adapt. Their work is rooted in place, it's cyclical and relational. The engineer, by contrast, works according to a plan, using abstract concepts. They design systems for a distance, aiming for control, efficiency, and scalability. And that is a huge difference in how we deal with the world. Not saying one is better than the other, one is old or new. It's two ways of looking at your world. And that is something that we encountered a lot here on the island. For example, we saw a lot of traditional homes, and we could see them very well because the traditional way of building is very different than the traditional way of building that we are used to in the Netherlands and in Belgium. And that is one way of dealing with public planning and urban planning. And then there's also all the master plans that have been made for the island back in the days, but also related to the fires and the flooding, which are two completely different ways of dealing with the land. But it's not only old versus new, as said. We saw the dragon houses, which are really what we would say the bricoleur, which are finding the perfect stones to stack one on top of each other to really build the most beautiful houses, and also in the most beautiful landscape. But maybe not at the same time, but also a bit more ancient are the marble columns, and the huge columns that you can also see in the landscape, which are, from our point of view, an engineer starting point, because you have to really have a plan, a concept to be able to make those huge columns. So the contrast between the bricoleur and the engineer is not a matter of style or preference. It reflects fundamentally different ideas about the relationship between people and place. And precisely there lies a crucial entry point for addressing the climate crisis. Because what we see here on Evia is that both don't trust one another. even worse, they don't even take one another seriously. And I think that is something that made us really sad in a way, because we need every point of view to be able to deal with the climate crisis. We talked 2 days ago about the speed by which everything is going, and do we have the time? No, we don't have the time, but we have all those points of views that we could, if we would trust one another, maybe put together and have a better idea of how we could move forward. Some more differences between the bricoleur, the catocosmos, and the anocosmos, the engineer. There's a rigid order, and there's a more chaotic way of working in the catocosmos, and how to deal with certain aspects. But there's also, for example, in Idipsos, we went to the hot sources, and it's a very beautiful public way of bathing in the nice hot water. But at the same time, in the summer, there's almost no hot water over, because all the hotels take the hot water, the bathing water, as well. So there's also, again, the two worlds coming together. There's also, of course, the mountain and the inland, where life is really small. It's small. It's not that life is scale, but the life is small, but the scale is small. A couple of goats, a couple of bees, a couple of chickens, and there's a way of living. And I don't want to minimalize this or laugh at it. On the contrary, it is such a beautiful way of showing how the bricoleur works, how those mini markets work, how people drive around with mini markets if there is even not a mini market, how we manage in a community to have a very peaceful life, it seems, from somebody that comes from abroad. And on the other hand, you have those huge engineered wind turbines that look exactly the same in the Netherlands as here, except they're only on the mountain here, who have to transform the whole landscape to be able to just transport one wing, which doesn't go on the bricoleurs routes, because the wing is way too large. And that contrast is so visible and so drastic on this island that it is almost strange that no maps have been made to show that contrast in a way. And it's not saying that, well, point. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about this slide, I think. So for the islanders, the fact that those wind turbines come there and that they create, I'm gonna go up a bit, and that they create energy that is not used by them somehow, or at least not all used by them, that energy, that electricity goes to other places where other ways of living are facilitated in a way, related to, or in contrast to how people live on the mountains, is so that it's almost impossible to understand that contrast, and to see how we take the land from bricoleurs to make something as an engineer for people somewhere else. And that is something that we found maybe the most striking. It was almost fearful to see that, especially if you also start talking with a lot of people living around. And one of the things that we got out of these conversations was the following. For the islanders, this means a loss of agency over their own environment, the environment which is so important for them to survive. Their land is overtaken by infrastructure that serves distant interests. Their role shifts from co-creator to spectator. And again, it's nothing new that I'm saying. I think everybody here thinks, like, yeah, again, the same thing. But why hasn't it been mapped before? I would then ask or wonder. And from going from a co-creator to a spectator is something that we found the most sad part here. Why couldn't we trust one another? Why aren't there programs not to help one another or to prevent fires or to make people more aware of what we could do? When no, we have to work on trust, on trusting one, on talking to one another, on trying to take the other serious. For somebody living in the Kato cosmos, living with the land is a way of living. It is not about being green or being innovative or being dynamic or being bio or organic or whatever. It is a way of living. It is a way of dealing with the bees. It is a way of dealing with the forest. It is being there and living with the land. For somebody living in the Anocosmos, green energy is a business model. It's about profit, it's about economy. And that is something that you face all over on this island. So what's missing from our humble point of view after 6 weeks of Evia in the plans for this island is not ambitions. There's plenty of ambitions from engineers, from local groups, from Diazoma, if you like, from a lot of people. But what for us is missing are connections between the Anocosmos and the Katocosmos. The connection to the land, to its people, to their knowledge, their rhythms, and their concerns. What's missing is an engineer who works alongside the bricoleur and not next to one another, ignoring one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marlies. Sorry, I cannot fix my microphone. We can have the questions since we're in a space where everyone's moving around. I thought we can approach each other and have the questions directly. So for now, we can welcome on stage Johanna Tinzel, one of the artists in residency from Austria. Johanna, you can start if you want. Do you need to set up something? Okay, then I'll leave it to you.
I need to set up my computer.
As we're setting up, just to inform you that Johanna's presentation consists of a short documentary she created while in Evia, along with it's a short video. Yeah, it's a work in progress. But it's in collaboration with the Etholodes in Evia, and also the volunteer groups of firefighters in Evia, and also the local community, as well as a short presentation of her experience here. Take your time, Johanna.
Thank you, Valia. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Johanna Tinzel. Okay. Okay. Hi, guys. Yeah, thank you so much, Marlies, for doing this brilliant summary of what we have experienced for the last month. I wanted I wanted to talk about what interested me to come to Evia, because I wanted to learn from the people, from the animals, and from the plants, and especially from their experiences with the natural disasters. And what I thought, what interests me the most is how the body relates to these disasters. Again, the humans, the animals, and the plants. And especially if we think of the scale of the wildfire, how we, with our bodies, or with the bodies of an animal or of a tree, for example, as a plant example, how can we relate to this scale of natural disasters? And what does this mean in terms of our vulnerabilities? And what does this mean for our body to get protected again or to try to prevent? And how we as communities can get organized. And the working title of my research is The Labor of Protecting. And I want to show you now 2 small clips of my research. They are just very first rough cuts. And in the first chapter, people talk Greek, but it's only for those who don't understand Greek. It's only technical speaking. It's only about the work they do. So it's not about documentation or something personal they would share. And I was happy that I got to know the Procopy Volunteer Association. This is a voluntary forest protection and rescue team. They got funded in 2008, and their headquarters is in Procopy in the Forest Museum. I think you have all met it yesterday. And they were so kind to let me join them for their first training, for the because the wildfire season in Greece starts on the 1st of May. And that means for all the volunteer associations that they have to start again with checking on their equipment, checking on their cars, checking on what they need for an eventual alert. And normally they would do it in front of the Forest Museum on the fields, but as I was able to join them, they were so nice to do it directly in the forest. This is the first part of my presentation, and the second part is a question that one of our interview partners, Kili Herali, she's from Cochin Emilia, she was posing a question back to us, which was very touching for me. And I think with what she has told us, she already gave an answer. Yeah, and this is now a video about 10 minutes, and I would like to share it with you.
Μου κάνει είναι μαντάλος, είναι εδώ που το έπαιξε. Ο Στάτος δεν μπορεί, να το μεγάλο λέει.
Το βρήκες.
Το 70 είναι. Άλλο. Αλλά αυτό το βλέπω σαν πιο έτριστο. Ή ακόμη και... Εγώ μπορώ να δώσει και σωλήνες. Μπορώ να βάλω σωλήνες. Και αυτές πάρω έτσι. Ναι. Εγώ να τις βάλω τους σωλήνες εδώ μέσα.
Αν δεν πιάνει, δεν μιλάει και τους δύο, δεν μιλάει και στα δύο.
Εδώ έχει αλφαβήτα.
Για κανάγιο,
Το πάει πάνω κάτω.
Ενώ σε αυτό έχει ένα. Εδώ
Το πάει πάνω κάτω. Πάνω κάτω.
εδώ σε αυτή τη διαφορά. Δηλαδή δεν θέλουμε.
Yeah, I just have to explain something. You see the barrier tape. The barrier tape is, they have a coach for the training. The name of the coach is Kostas, and he is a retired firefighter. He was working in all over Greece, and he's also setting up the training in the forest. And there's 3 barrier tapes. That means for the training, they have to extinguish 3 fires, just that you know.
Θοδωρή, εκεί μέσα είναι το πάνω. Έχει πρόσβαση από εδώ. Λίγο εδώ θα σταματήσω, εγώ δεν είπα τίποτα. Τώρα θα κοιτάτε που έχει πρόσβαση. Από εδώ θα μπορούσε να είναι.
Τα ξέρετε την εκκίνηση καταναλωτία.
Έλα, Θεοχάρη κάποιος. Από εδώ, Θεοχάρη κάποιος να βγει στη μάγια, από εδώ να μην την πετάξει.
Ούτε δεν για να κάνουμε ένα έλεγχο περιμετρικά εκεί από κάτω στο δικό σας το συμβάν. Καλώς ορίσατε.
Κάτω είναι, πώς μας είναι, μου δίνει εγγραμμένα.
Νικό, θέλω να κλείσει το νερό τελείως για να μπορέσουμε να αρχίσουμε να σπάμε. Και πάει στη μάγια από κάτω για να κλείσει το νερό τελείως.
Τα σουβλινάκια των Αθηνιάσεων. Τώρα το ζήσα, αλλά δεν ξανα...
Μήπως λίγο ξεμπούκαμε στο κινητό σου να μας τραβήξει
Μπορεί
τώρα
κιόλας.
ο Αντρέας.
Θα σας τραβήξουμε και σαν άλλη. Ναι, ναι. Τώρα θα δείξει. Ωραία, λίγο παιδιά. Κώστα. Κάμπρι.
Ah, okay.
Ναι, αν συμβεί κάτι δεν θα φύγουμε. Που είναι βέβαια δύσκολο τώρα, γιατί εντάξει, έχουμε καεί, είναι πολύ δύσκολο τώρα να ξαναγίνει κάτι. Πολύ δύσκολο. Και όπως και δεν το περιμέναμε αυτή η φωτιά, δηλαδή να ξεκινήσει από 40 χιλιόμετρα μακριά και να φτάσει εδώ και από τη μία θάλασσα να φύγει να έρθει στην άλλη. Να καίει ανεξέλεγκτα, να πηγαίνει όπου θέλει και να μην την ενοχλεί κανείς. Είναι λίγο περίεργο.
She's asking us what would we do if we were in this situation? Would we leave the house or not? And yes, of course, like in theory, we wouldn't, I think, after what we heard, but we were discussing that maybe if you come across such a big fire, maybe you want to evacuate, but she said there's no way I would leave again my house. And we also touched a bit on the trust issue that has been, emerging from the fact that you hear orders, but you cannot really trust instructions, and you cannot really trust that this is the right thing to do.
Or also that you don't have this faith that the government would support, that they would provide the water to save the houses or the hydroplanes, is it? Anyway, the planes or helicopters that would come to assist on air in case it gets really bad, and then that they also do not take the responsibility that it creates insecurity, that also they say, okay, but you will stay and you take this risk, and there are also small children and you take the risk for them as well. So then that it was a bit of a
Difficult situation. Yeah, but do you feel more safe now? Because is there, I mean,
She's
more emergency alert now here, or
no? But she feels more safe because they have already burned, so it couldn't happen at this scale again.
Okay.
Yeah, and she also said that you really wouldn't expect that it would start 40 kilometers away and then it would burn from one seaside to the other side of the island without
being stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to answer your question,
Thank you so much, Johanna, for sharing your words and for this lovely video. And I want everyone to welcome Eleni Vretakou, one of the local artists of the lab. Eleni is an artist, but also a designer. She's going to walk us through what she did during her residency in Evia.
Hello. I need a moment for this. Yeah, sorry. Hi, everyone. So I will start with this. So my first impression, because I have visited Evia again, though I'm not from this area, was when I was driving on the way to northern Evia. I was passing by the river streams, and I was very surprised by the huge mountains of dirt and rocks that I was leaning over and trying to see the river, and I never was able to see the river. So to me, this was very striking at first. And then, of course, I know that the fires were a big reason for, oh, you can see this, sorry, that they are a big reason for why there are these intense floods. But I really wanted to get more into it and really see what are all the components that led to these big disasters. And so, yes, the fires have been very instrumental. The soil was very dry and depleted and couldn't hang on to anything. So then it trickled down, it made its way into the rivers. It also brought debris with it from the burned trees, which blocked the small infrastructure in the villages. But then there was this other reason that is quite as important, that it's a fungus that has infected the plane trees. It's called Keratokystis platani. And this is not, let's say, a native fungus, so it's from the US. And the reason that these trees, whenever they get infected, they will die within 1 to 3 years, is because they are not used to this fungus. And these huge plane trees are much of the support of the riverbeds, of the river banks. So the roots hold together the walls of the rivers. And since thousands of these trees have died from this fungus, together with the wildfires, there was no support whatsoever in the river banks, and so the soil totally got carried away, the walls collapsed, and it led to the catastrophic events of Daniel and Elias. So then I became really interested into this concept that is erosion, and how this has been, it is a natural process and a physical phenomenon that happens anyway, but it has been exemplified so much by these factors, sorry. And so after all this natural widening of the rivers and the canals, there was also a huge artificial I'm so sorry, intervention, found the word. So then the rivers were widened with bulldozers in order to prevent any future events, any future similar events. And so the rivers just look empty because the I'm so sorry, the riverbank is not meant to now carry the natural flow of the water, but these extreme future case scenarios. And these are some infrastructural recent projects in Reviès that, again, they widened the small canals in the villages in order to be able to support future events. These are some photos. I don't know if you can see, maybe only on the screen there, of huge amounts of the plane trees that are being cut down and collected on the sides of the street, and then you like residents are not able to actually use them even for burning themselves, because they have to be collected in a very and disposed of in a very controlled manner to avoid further spread. And so I wanted to work with erosion not just as this physical process, but more so as a methodology and a material and a working method, and even maybe as a forensic tool. So for me, initially I wanted to work with agriculture or with food and how these industries have been affected by the floods. But after speaking to a lot of the local residents, one of the most devastating things to me was that everyone, with the only exception of the chief of the forestry department, whose literal job is to be out in the forest, said that they have not been able to go walking or hiking since, and it has been 4 years. So this was something that was in their everyday lives and something that they would do day to day, and they haven't for years now. And specifically, I was with a resident of Limni, Katerina Blechu, and she volunteered to take me around and show me the mountain where she used to hike, and also that she knew from the forestry department that there was a lot of recent infrastructure, like dams, built. And even we went together, and she admitted that she hadn't been there since before the fires. And to me, it was very heartwarming to see her excitement in small pine trees that are starting to grow again, and that we experienced this together for the first time. So they have all been mentioning that ta apokaidya is something that they don't want to see, which is basically the burnt corpses of the trees that resemble tombstones in a graveyard. And so with this methodology, taking erosion as a process, I collected some of this material. I wanted to work with found material, to work with what stayed behind. And I started slowly sanding away, which is a very painstaking process. And by the end, I kind of wished I hadn't. But also, to me, it was this process that takes a lot of time, a lot of care, a lot of patience, which is also the way that I think is the only way to deal with this and to rebuild something. And then I visited this abandoned paper factory in Rovies with a local resident, Nikos Kalitsis. And because this was abandoned before even the fires, it stopped operating, and so it just was left there to ruin. It was first burned, and then it was flooded, and then everything stayed this way, so nobody cleaned it up. And so inside, all the sediment was never cleaned. It settled, it cracked, and it looks like the bed of a dried river. So then I collected this clay. What was striking to me, there were also these houses on the side of the factory that are also abandoned. And it was very weird to see that after years of these disasters, they still have these traces of the flood so prominently, the mud up to the roof. And it was kind of like how there are visible and invisible marks of these disasters, and they take a lot of time to actually clean up and be out of sight. And to me, this is also what happens in the collective memories of the people, and it also most likely takes even longer. So then I collected this clay and I processed it, and I kind of I made these vessels that resemble traces from these abandoned buildings, like the walls or the window sills, just these traces that have still the ruin imprinted on them. And what I wanted to do was to not fire them and have them here exposed to the weather and time and to people's touch, so that erosion can also be part of this process. And here I must say that I was reading this book last year. It's called Words of Weather, and it's published by the Onassis Foundation. And it has a lot of terms, like it speaks about extremes or forecasting or acclimatization. And so it felt very relevant. And I revisited it for this project. And I remembered that while I was reading it on a summer day, I was reading outside. And then I left it outside, I forgot about it. And there was this crazy, bizarre, unexpected, huge downpour of rain that really it's not happening in Greece in the summer. It's not something I anticipated. So I found it the next day. It was already dried up from the sun and crinkled all the pages. And I was so sad and pissed that this happened. But then I reread the title that's called Words of Weather, and I couldn't help but smile, because now it wasn't just words about weather, it was also carrying the weather. And so where I'm going with this is that this is kind of what I want to happen with these pieces. And I think maybe I manifested this rain, so I apologize for this. And finally, I just have this small short film that is mostly just a visual representation of the field research that I was doing in the riverbanks, and a bit of Blender that I wanted to try. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eleni, both for a lovely presentation and also for treating the land with such care. We can have a short coffee break now and come back in 10 minutes or so. Frosso is going to present. Frosso is also one of the local artists who worked with children along northern Evia. After that, we're going to have a very short break because we're going to move on to the part of the more performing acts. We're going to have a performance by Zoilakidis, and afterwards, we're going to have the presentation of Joe and Robbie, who are going to be in the booth to your left, and they want to share some instructions with you. So it's going to be a different format. So for now, I'll leave it to Frosso. And
thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And it's so nice to see you all. I'm absolutely very, very stressed doing this, very keen. But I'm going to do my best, I promise. Although I am from Greece, I haven't visited Evia before. So I really didn't know the landscape of Evia before this residency. So initially, I started from the water. I started from the floods and thinking from there, where can I take this? What can I do in this residency? The floods led me against the flow of the river up on the mountains. And up on the mountains, where was the kind of like part of the large fire that happened here in 2021. So I met with people from 3 villages up on the mountain between Limni and Madoudi, which was kind of like the extent of the Great Fire. And these are, you can see it, it's Kurkuli, which is at the top of the mountain, and then Skepasti and Kehries. So it's a kind of like a triangle of villages that are quite interconnected as well. So the children from one village, they go to school to another village. And one thing that they have in common also is that they actually work with the land and the forest. So these are one of the main residents of people who collect resin, so the resin collectors, but also there is a lot of farmers, beekeepers, and all sorts. So most of their actual income comes from the forest and the land around. So during the residency, I spent a lot of time, and also because there I kind of discovered a timeline of events. And it was something we were talking also about it when we did the talks on the 14th. And it's about this understanding of climate change. We generally understand climate change and these events of natural disaster. Sometimes the general connection is this idea of changing of climate. But within this story, we will see that there is much more into it, and things that we kind of like are underlying what a natural disaster and climate change can actually bring to a place. So in Greece, we have a lot of floods, but we also have many, many fires. I think from the time I remember, in summers, we don't actually ask if it's going to be a fire, we ask where is going to be the fire. It's actually part of our daily kind of like understanding that during summers in Greece, we will have fires. And we have become accustomed to that. Although and from that we have floods, usually commonly areas that they had fire, then they have floods, because it's what Eleni also described, the lack of forest, the lack of support in the ground. They can't hold the water, so then that ends in the flood. And this is exactly what happened in this area. We had the starting of 2021 February, where there was a big snowstorm that had an effect in the forest. It broke a lot of trees. It actually kind of like destroyed part of the landscape. Then in the summer, in August, there was the big fire. What happened in February also played a big role, along with other factors, because parts of the forest, of the broken forest, were unreachable and also were very much fuel to the fire. And then from the fire, we led down to the floods. So it's a clear timeline of connected events. But the underlying kind of association of climate change that comes from that is the human factor, and is the economical factors and political factors. And that's something that sometimes when we think climate change, when we think natural disaster, we stay in the natural. But in this case, and what I've actually experienced, and through the conversations I had with a lot of the people in the villages, it actually is a timeline of a natural disaster through human factor becoming a devastation. And that's kind of like the timeline that my work here would like to kind of like capture. So, and I'm just gonna look at my notes in case I forget something. So yeah, so so I spend, so this is the landscape I came across when I traveled up in the mountains. Imagine, I was trying to imagine this as a thick forest that you can actually not be able to see the mountain across. And that was one of the conversations we had with the villagers. It was that they were hidden, that the whole kind of like area was within the forest. So, and now the whole land is exposed, and you have these open kind of like space lands that they've been transformed. So this is a little bit some pictures of the work I did there. So I spent quite a bit of time talking to the local villages in the cafes and stuff, but also I spend a lot of time with the children, talking to the children, and I will explain the connection between that and what have I done there. So this is Kurkuli village, but also there are some of the children are from of the village of Skepasti. I don't have that many pictures of when spending time with the people there, because initially I needed to build a connection with trust, and taking pictures and posing and stuff wasn't part of what was going on. It was more of like intimate conversations, try to let them know me and allow me to spend time with them and learn their stories. So this is not documented, a little bit, a cheeky image. And then this is the second workshop I did with the children, and I've created a fairy tale, a book, which I then, before I came here, I took it back to get some feedback, because the idea was whether that represented them and their story. So I thought that that was important to actually go back before I come and present it, and also give their feedback of what it was. And then this is some pictures in the other village in Kehries, where we did the workshop open in the square, and parents and kids just joined in. And then a little bit more, the second workshop for the second work. So yeah, and I think, yeah. So coming presented by that story, for me, I felt that I had no other choice but taking away the position of the artist, of the protagonist, and actually inhabiting a role of a narrator. I just wanted to tell this story that I felt that it describes very, very well what really climate change is about. So I created a fairy tale, and because I felt that that was the easiest way to connect for a few reasons. First of all, during all of the conversations, and one of the reasons that children got involved in that, it was because there was a recurring question that the parents were talking about, that the children are asking, why has this happened? And always the explanation was difficult, was complicated. And I felt that a story, a fairy tale, a tale, is a tool to actually describe complicated things in a very, very simple manner, in a way that a kid can understand. That was one thing that prompted me to go for that. And the second thing is that my whole interest is this was also knowledge that is lost because we're losing land, so we're losing the knowledge with that land. Occupations like the resin collection are probably not going to be around for in the future, because the forest is gone and it needs another 80 years to reach to the point to be able to collect the resin. So that's the generation now, and the next generation are not going to have that connection to the forest in terms of the resin collection. So that's a knowledge we're kind of losing. But we're also gaining knowledge. It's always a two-way thing. So I wanted to see what we learned, what we lost, and what we need to take from this to actually face the future that is coming. And tales and stories have kind of traveled knowledge further than anything else. We learned from ancestors, from stories, from fables. And the other thing that stories do is that they place the person in the position of the audience, of the spectator. Reflecting upon the story is actually having the time to look at what happened to them in that way and then reflect on that. It takes you out of being in the story and it puts you in the audience. And I think that that is one of a very, very strong tool for reflection. And that's why I chose to do the fairy tale. The fairy tale starts classically with a Greek myth of a nymph that, in order to be saved from a tragic kind of sentimental and erotic triangle, is turned into a pine tree. And her name is Pittis, and Pittis is the ancient Greek name for pine tree. So I took this and then I used it, and I used her as the narrator of the story. Pity goes to Evia, it visits the villages, and she lives through the whole destruction. And she has this magic ability to transform and mingle with people and hear what they learn. But she comes in as a blank canvas that just observes how people kind of interact with the nature. And she asks a lot of questions. So the fairy tale is about prompting people to think about the knowledge we're losing. Things such as, for example, the benefits of a plant that grows around us that now has become a capsule that you buy as a vitamin, and it's all over you. And from that to the importance of the forest, the occupations that and ways that people learn how to live in kind of in more of a balance with nature, that when you lose the landscape, you lose that knowledge. And then really tell the story. So I've used the phrases that people gave me in the story. I've put the actual people that I spoke to so people can identify themselves in the story because it's their story, not mine. And actually also to describe to kids what has happened, that it was not just a disaster. And it had a lot of human intervention into what has actually happened at the end. And also is this idea of bridging. I think that thinking that the next generations are the ones that are going to solve the problem, or the ones that they have to deal with the problem, I think, yeah, it's, in one way it's true. But on the other hand, what I want to do is I want to give the children questions, difficult questions to ask their parents, and prompt the parents to take action for them. And that's what this is all about. It's not about the children, it's about making the children the agents to ask questions and prompt adults to act, because they need to give the answer. And that's what this fairy tale is about. So yeah, so this is kind of the main part of the work I did here. So please do take a little bit of time and read it, because yeah, I would appreciate that. But through this, there's so many other things came out, and that led me to the second workshop. In the book, I have included the drawings that I ask children to do in the first workshop, because I really wanted to see their perspective. What do they understand? How they kind of like, they lived through this, how they feel about it, what do they think about the future? And I've actually have their interviews, and you can hear them, but they are in Greek, unfortunately. So, but I think that their drawings speak much more, because what I asked them to do in the drawing was actually remember their best memory of the forest and drew it. And if you actually see that the fire is part of that, there is a lot of children, and in particular this little girl that is actually a bit touching. She's 7 years old now, so she was quite little when she was there. And this is her memory of the forest, because she doesn't remember the forest before the fire. But apart from that, they still go there, they still play, they still enjoy the forest, and they still ask why. So using them as my collaborators, partner in crime, we came to do the next workshop, and that was a little bit more conceptual, but I think they enjoyed it even more, because there was colors and we were throwing colors and everything. The idea of that work was, how do we understand coexistence? How do we revive coexistence? If we're going to use the children to be kind of like the ones that will lead in the future about the climate change, how do we talk about this coexistence? So basically, a practice that I do with other works as well, and it has to do with knowledge and memory, is to use white thread on white canvas to kind of represent things that they are around us, but we forget them, we take them for granted. They are there, but we kind of ignore. They live in the background. They are white threads on a white wall that if you don't go close, you can't actually see. And I took 2 canvases to the kids, and I asked them to reinvent the images, to find the nature, to find the animals, to actually kind of like play with the colors, make them theirs, and bring back that nature we kind of tend to forget, especially people like me that just come from a big city. And then I connected that to the middle canvas that is a human. And the idea is that without the nature around us, we don't have life. We need the life around us for us to live. And therefore, they're all connected. And if you take away, you're taking away the color, you're taking away the life. And that's the final work. And I think that's that. The next thing, but I don't think I need to, because you all promised you're going to read the book, is I was planning to read you a little bit and a bit of the book, but I'm just going to skim through it, and then you can, I will expect you to all sit and read the whole thing. So yeah, so this is kind of like when the fire starts, and then birds can shout fire, and this the quotes are from people. Somebody did say, "I'd rather lose my house than lose the forest, because I can rebuild my house, I can't rebuild my forest." So all of this is from words from people. Another very touching story, the person who actually described that to me, she started crying, was these two kids that they were living with the car, and their grandparents denied to evacuate. And they were leaving, and they felt very, very guilty because they thought that they left their grandparents to die in the fire. And then, yeah, and then this is where it comes, the human intervention, and it comes political, and it comes, the big questions kind of come. Why there was no water? Why there was no support? People here felt abandoned, and they felt that they were fighting an uneven battle. And then what came after? It's a picture that I just couldn't draw. I just left the ink to do its job, and I think it actually described what was there very well. Just the pain. And then this is my protagonist. This is Pity. And I created this kind of like parallel myth that in ancient Greece, and just a fun fact, the reason we knock on wood is because in ancient Greece they believe that inside the trees live nymphs, and when you talk to the nymph can actually help you your wish to come true, because they were kind of like in between the humans and the gods. So with that in mind, in the pine forest, there were nymphs living in the trees along with the animals, and they were the sisters of Pitys. And when the fire happened, they hid in pine cones. That was the only way to survive, because the pine cone survives. It keeps the seeds. And then when the ground is cool again, it releases the seeds. And that's how the forest germinates. Because for pine trees, fires are something of their circle of life. They don't combust, but natural fires like lighting or something like that, because they have the resin, which is highly flammable, the forest catches fire, and then it germinates by that process of the pine cones stay and then release the seeds when the ground is cooler within 48 hours. So that is part of the natural life of a pine forest, but obviously we're talking about a very different fire here. So yeah, so her sister survived by kind of hiding in the pine cones, and when a nymph goes in the pine cone glows, and that's how they could find them, I suppose. Am I going over? Is it? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is me. I'm not going to take more of your time. Thank you so much, and that's it. I have nothing else to say.
Thank you, Froso. Lovely work, and for everyone, you'll be
Is it still too quiet? You see green again. You see buds and flowers branching out and bursting forth. You can detect the sounds of the birds again. Do you remember the nightingale singing like it had all the time in the world? The greenfinch and the goldfinch, the bees that hummed like a soft machine of joy, buzzing like the earth was alive. Back when the world had music in it? What do you mean? The world still has music in it. We dance, we eat and we drink, we buzz. Buzz, 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 bees buzzing like they're buzzing a buzz. You've watched the colors bleed. Beehives crumbled into ash, firewood black before it even touched flame. Why? Evergreen, broadleaves, oak, myrtle, ivy. They screamed. They burned with their mouths open. The pine, just bones now. What? You don't think trees can scream? Was there ashes, falling like snow, black snow, rain that whispered ruin? Do you remember the stones you would collect from the beach? You'd draw little eyes on them, sneak up on your grandmother's roof and play with them. That was before the floods came angry, dragged trash and carcass alike, from mountain to sea, and the mud swallowed the floor whole, and that roof was not just a place for play anymore. On May 1st, you didn't handcraft a wreath, a Stefania. You wanted to let the spring flowers be, let the forest adjust, adapt, rebuild. Adjust, adapt, rebuild. It is rebuilding. Do you want to move the couch back facing the window? You changed the direction of it, remember? You felt that you'd rather have it facing the wall than facing the new landscape. And you have yet to take your daily walk to the rock beneath your tree. You're afraid of what you'll find. A fox with a tail like a question mark. A squirrel turning in circles. A turtle lost, looking for water when there was none. 4 years and you smell time in the wind.
Thank you so much, Joy, for a lovely performance. We will also invite you to say a few words for your residency, if you like, and then we can move to the next book.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I was curious about our sense of belonging what happens when we no longer recognize or we don't feel like we recognize our landscape, our surroundings, and kind of what that does to a person. So yeah, I've been speaking to people everywhere, either arranging interviews or just going out for a beer and approaching someone in a bar and just asking them a few questions that I was curious to know, which was more or less the questions would be like, do you feel at home in Evia? Do you feel connected to the nature? How has that changed over the years? Is there a place or a building or a landscape that you no longer recognize? And what emotions resonate within you? And also what gives you strength and resilience for the future? And I made it clear that these questions were just to start conversation, kind of. And what surprised me in my research was partly the generosity of the people, how so many people were so willing to share and tell their stories, and also some very common factors that it surprised me that so many people almost gave the same answers to questions that I had. And specifically something like, for example, a lot of people I spoke to said, I have felt very connected to the nature, but I still refuse to visit the forest. I still don't want to take my daily walk, or I can't look at it. This trauma response of avoidance that was like really a common factor among so many people, which is really sad. And what else? Yeah, so just the monologue was just like collected thoughts that I wrote together. And the movement, I was also curious of how, I don't know, a tree would feel, or just a creature, an animal feels also coming out in this, maybe being planted and growing up in this surrounding that it doesn't really recognize anymore. So yeah, that's that. If you have any more questions, we can talk more later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. We can move to the next booth for the artistic duo of Joe Hodges and Robbie Coleman. They want to share something with you, some instructions, but also present their research and their residency. So I'll give it to you, Joe. Thank you.
Okay. If everyone could maybe gather around here, that would be brilliant. Thank you. Okay. So I'm Joe, this is Robbie. Robbie likes conversation, but not in a big group. So I've been nominated to speak. And I'm afraid I'm going to read because I haven't had time to kind of really capture all our thoughts in my mind. So we've had a lot to learn and absorb in our time here. And we've focused on collecting thoughts, feelings, and impressions through a series of encounters. And in the process, we've found surprising resonances between the communities here and our own home in rural southwest Scotland, which has also been impacted by floods and recent wildfires. So we came with no plan at all, and we've let ourselves be guided by chance, by unexpected meetings, by conversations, and even by objects found in the street, like a set of 1950s Greek encyclopedias dumped in a bin. So we carried those home with us, and they've been our constant companions. We can't read them, but that hasn't stopped us. The discarded encyclopedias were once used to convey fixed hierarchical knowledge, and we have enjoyed repurposing them into something unpredictable and playful. So during our conversations, we've learned that many people see the catastrophic wildfires here as an opportunity for the manipulation by government and corporations for profit. And people have spoken about this earlier. There seems to be a lack of trust in government at all levels, and climate change hasn't been necessarily the most pressing concern for the people that we've spoken to. And here as everywhere, we found contradictions, a deep love of nature, beauty of the island, but beaches marred by rubbish, concrete, more concrete, and everything offered in plastic bags. But we did find inspiration as we connected with the local community activists who are reclaiming public spaces, like Nikos, who's here, opposing industrial scale landscape changes and developing resilience through local seed share festivals. We also met Athena Zioka from Limni, who's captured images, beautiful images of her favorite walks before the fires, and then she went to the same places and captured the same images after the fires. And we put together a little slideshow of those images. I hope you'll be able to see them in the break, if we can still use the screen there. So as we navigated the uneven pavements, we found hospitality and generosity and a willingness to share stories. We asked questions, listened, and allowed our experiences and encounters to settle and began to sift and weave ideas. So today we're offering two interconnected works that reflect our encounters and thinking over our time here. So they're open-ended tools for dialogue and shared exploration, and they are works in progress. Both pieces, we treat the materials we've gathered not as objects, but as collaborators, active agents, ecological and symbolic storytellers. So the taste of honey becomes a map of place shaped by geological processes, the relationships between sun and the flora, and the socio-economic threads that connect the bees, beekeepers, and the land. And the silt from a river's alluvial plain holds a visceral memory of recent floods. And charred wood from the forest carries the marks of environmental catastrophe, but also becomes kindling, fuel for conversation and collective thinking. So we invite you to explore these materials with us as their tools for kind of thinking together. So the first work here is Campfire Tales, which is 6 bundles of kindling, which have been gathered from the wildfire zone in the north. And these are to be used to ignite 6 campfires in other places at other points in time in the future. So each bundle contains an idea or provocation from our encounters with people and landscapes here. So a gathering around a fire is a perfect form to conduct a public conversation. And for thousands of years, campfires' circular democratic glow has been a space for open exchange and for speaking and listening and sharing histories and strengthening bonds between people. So we wanted to reclaim and reframe the fire as a source of warmth, light, and connection. So the second work, which is here, and which we're going to invite you to engage with us in, is called 6 Bowls, Ecologies of Resistance, and it draws on site-specific materials to create a space for dialogue and reflection in response to ecological crisis. So it emerges from our time here, exploring landscapes that have been shaped not only by wildfires and floods, but by extractive economies. Am I getting feedback? Is it okay? It's okay. Okay. Okay, right. So we just wanted to think about the kind of some of the underlying issues of abandonment, inequality, and also thinking about how we can invite political and imagination engagement, because we are enmeshed in these systems and they have a massive impact. So we have 6 elemental materials: air, honey, silt, stone, water, and burnt wood. So around these bowls, we've built 9 different ways that these materials can be used. So there's a mapping tool for fragile systems, a ritual space for regeneration, a museum of memory and loss, and there's more playful and imaginative uses like a magical tool for resisting capitalism. So each bowl is not just a container, but a portal that holds a story, a memory, a provocation, or a future. And together they create a sensory space to explore ecological entanglements, resistance, and renewal. That's the hope anyway. It's an experiment. We'll see what happens. So this work's grounded in the experience of local communities, and the communities have contributed words and stories. And it's activated by you, the people who take part. It's a space where politics, ecology, and imagination meet in small, sensory, and sometimes surprising ways. So it's not passive, but it asks something of you who participate. And kind of in the big picture, we want to explore entanglements and question extractive systems and imagine a different future. So it's really simple. It's designed to travel to different contexts where it can be shaped by locality and used to engage communities, artists, civic processes, members of the public. And we see it as just an emerging space for encounter play and practical imagination, and hopefully think about how we can reshape the future. So how it works over the next hour or so. Robbie has some cards there, and there's 9 possible uses for this installation on the cards, but only 6 are active today. So what we'd like you to do is take a card, and Robbie has some clippers, and you can clip your choice of how you want to encounter the installation, what that's going to be for you today. And you just clip a hole next to your choice. And then you bring it to the installation. It is for one person at a time. So Robbie will control the flow, okay? When a space is available, he'll invite someone in, and then we'll just see what happens. Does that make sense? Yes. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope there wasn't too much feedback.
Or just to say also this, on this piece, there's some reading there.
Yeah.
You can read the provocations that go. Use the microphone.
Thanks. Hello there. I just wanted to say there's some reading that goes, you can read the provocations that go with the bundles of firewood on the screen forms.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass you back to Daria.
Thank you so much. That was the last artistic presentation of the day. So you're free to enjoy the exhibition. I want to thank all the partners of Turning the Tide, everyone who attended, the team at Artit, and of course, the artists. Feel free to ask any questions and navigate through the space as you like. And of course, participate in Joe and Robbie's installation. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much. Something, so I don't forget, we also have Babis Fetsa's books available if you want to check them out.